Most people think their biggest threats are loud, obvious, and aggressive, but the truth is far more dangerous. The people who ruin your life rarely kick down the door. They sit beside you, they smile at you. They call themselves friends. They don't destroy you in one moment. They do it slowly, through doubt, distraction, and subtle discouragement, because the most dangerous people are not those who oppose your dreams. They are the ones who pretend to support them, while quietly pulling you away from your purpose. There are people who only show up when things are easy, but disappear the moment growth requires sacrifice. People who listen to your plans not to help, but to measure how threatened they feel. Some people don't want to see you fail. They just don't want to see you succeed more than them, and that's the danger. There are those who drain your energy, question your confidence, and normalize mediocrity. They don't attack your goals directly. They attack your belief that those goals matter. You must understand this. Not everyone in your life deserves access to your future. Trust is not given because of history. It's earned through alignment of values, integrity, and intent. Protect your time, protect your vision, protect your standards, because the fastest way to lose your life's direction is to let the wrong people influence your decision. Growth requires courage, and sometimes that courage looks like walking alone. Not everyone who walks with you today belongs in the life you're building tomorrow. Choose wisely. The most dangerous people are rarely the ones who openly attack you. They don't raise their voices, issue threats, or stand in direct opposition to your goals. Instead, they operate quietly, almost invisibly, blending into your daily life so naturally that you hardly notice their influence. They sit in familiar places, speak in familiar tones, and wear the comfortable mask of concern, humor, or honesty. Because they are not loud, they don't trigger your defenses, and that is exactly why they are so effective. They begin with doubt, not harsh criticism, but small questions that sound reasonable. Are you sure this is the right time? Do you really think this will work for you? Has anyone like you ever succeeded at this? These questions don't feel like attacks. They feel like caution, but repeated often enough, they plant seeds in your mind. Over time, those seeds grow into hesitation, and hesitation slowly replaces confidence. You stop moving forward with certainty. You start second, guessing decisions you once felt excited about. Then comes sarcasm, disguised as humor, a joke about your ambition, a laugh when you talk about your dreams, a comment that sounds playful but carries a sharp edge. Wow, look at you, the next big success story. Everyone laughs, including you, because you don't want to seem sensitive, but inside, something shifts. Your dreams begin to feel embarrassing. You become more careful about what you share. You start shrinking your vision to avoid becoming the target of another joke. Discouragement follows, subtle and persistent, not direct commands to quit, but constant reminders of risk, failure, and inconvenience. They focus on everything that could go wrong, rarely acknowledging what could go right. When you succeed, they downplay it. When you struggle, they magnify it. Slowly, your progress feels smaller, and your setbacks feel heavier. You begin to associate effort with exhaustion instead of purpose. What makes this kind of destruction so dangerous is that it feels normal. It happens in conversations over coffee, in casual messages, in everyday interactions. There is no dramatic moment where you can point and say, "This is where I was harmed." Instead, one day you wake up less confident than you used to be, less willing to take risks, less connected to the person you once believed you could become. Over time, their voice becomes your inner voice. You hear their doubt before you hear your own courage. You repeat their sarcasm in your mind before you remember your potential. And the most tragic part is that you may never realize where it came from. You might blame yourself for losing motivation, not knowing that it was slowly drained from you by quiet words and constant undermining. This is why awareness matters, because what destroys you quietly doesn't feel like danger. It feels like familiarity, and by the time you recognize the damage, you're already far from the confidence you once had. Not everyone who supports you wants you to win, and that truth is uncomfortable because it challenges how we naturally view encouragement. We assume that applause means alignment, and that kind words mean genuine belief. But sometimes support is only surface level. offered when it costs nothing, and withdrawn the moment your growth begins to change the balance of a relationship. These are the people who cheer for you at the starting line, but feel uneasy when you start pulling ahead. They celebrate your early efforts because those efforts don't threaten them. When your goals are still ideas and your progress is small, they feel safe offering praise. It makes them look supportive, open-minded, and positive, but as your consistency turns into results, something shifts. Your growth becomes a mirror, reflecting what they have avoided, delayed, or given up on. And that reflection creates discomfort, so the applause changes. It becomes quieter, less enthusiastic. Sometimes it turns into conditional support. They clap as long as you don't grow too fast, too far, or too differently from what they expected. When you start evolving beyond the role they assigned you, they begin to pull back emotionally, not because you've done something wrong, but because your progress challenges their sense of identity and comfort. Some people don't consciously wish for your failure. They just wish for your growth to slow down. They hope you'll pause, settle, or return to a version of yourself that feels familiar and non-threatening. They may say they're happy for you, but their actions tell a different story. They stop asking questions. They stop showing interest. They change the subject when you talk about your goals. Over time, their silence becomes louder than their applause ever was. There are also those who support you in public, but compete with you in private. They clap when others are watching, but internally they measure your success against their own. Your wins feel like losses to them. Instead of feeling inspired, they feel diminished, so they subtly minimize your achievements, remind you of how lucky you are, or suggest that your success isn't sustainable. These comments aren't meant to stop you outright. They're meant to make you doubt the legitimacy of what you're building. The most confusing part is that these people often believe they care about you. In their minds, they're being honest, realistic, or protective. But what they're really protecting is their comfort. Your growth disrupts the familiar dynamic, and rather than grow with you, they try to keep you where you are. This kind of hidden resistance can be more damaging than open opposition. When someone openly doubts you, it's easier to recognize and defend against. But when doubt comes wrapped in applause, it slips past your guard. You start questioning yourself instead of the source. And slowly, if you're not careful, you may begin to dim your own light just to keep others comfortable. Energy drainers are rarely obvious, and that is what makes them so destructive. They don't announce themselves as harmful or negative. They don't always complain loudly or openly oppose your goals. In fact, they often appear reasonable, caring, and deeply involved in your life. Yet after every interaction with them, you feel something is off. You feel unusually tired, mentally foggy, or uncertain about things you were once clear about. That feeling is not random, and it should never be ignored. Some people have a way of pulling energy from you without asking for permission. Conversations with them feel heavy, even when the topic is simple. They talk in circles, focus on problems without seeking solutions, and bring emotional weight into moments that should feel light. You walk away feeling like you've given something but received nothing in return. Over time, these interactions accumulate, and the exhaustion becomes your new normal. Confusion is one of the first warning signs. Energy drainers often give mixed messages. One moment they encourage you, the next they question your decisions. They say they support you, but their words don't align with their actions. This inconsistency forces your mind to work overtime, trying to understand their intentions. The mental effort of constantly decoding someone else's behavior drains focus that should be used for growth, creativity, and clarity. Doubt follows closely behind. After spending time with them, you begin to question your instincts. You replay conversations in your head, wondering if you misunderstood something or overreacted. They may subtly shift blame, downplay your feelings, or make you feel unreasonable for wanting more. Slowly, you start trusting their perspective more than your own, and that erosion of self-trust is dangerous. Fatigue is the final signal, and it's not just physical, it's emotional and mental. You feel worn down even without doing anything demanding. Motivation fades. Simple decisions feel harder than they should. This happens because your energy is being spent managing someone else's emotional state, expectations, or unpredictability. You are constantly adjusting, explaining, and accommodating, leaving little space for yourself. What makes energy drainers especially destructive is that they often normalize this dynamic. They make it seem like this is just how relationships are supposed to feel. They frame your exhaustion as sensitivity and your need for boundaries as selfishness. Over time, you stop questioning the drain and start questioning yourself instead. Life is built on energy. Your ability to think clearly, act decisively, and move forward depends on it. When someone consistently leaves you feeling smaller, slower, and less certain, that is not coincidence. It is information. Paying attention doesn't mean immediate confrontation or dramatic exits. It starts with awareness, because once you recognize what is draining you, you regain the power to protect what gives you life. Trust is often confused with familiarity. We tend to believe that the longer someone has been in our life, the more trustworthy they must be. Shared memories, past struggles, and years of connection can create a powerful sense of obligation. But time alone does not define trust, and history does not guarantee alignment. Someone can walk beside you for years and still be moving in a completely different direction than the future you are trying to build. Values are what determine whether a person belongs in your next chapter. How someone handles responsibility, honesty, growth, and respect reveals far more than how long they've known you. A person who once supported you may no longer share your priorities. That doesn't make them bad, but it does make them misaligned. When values diverge, trust weakens, even if the relationship has deep roots. Longevity can actually be misleading. The longer someone has been around, the easier it becomes to excuse behavior that no longer serves you. You tolerate inconsistency because they've always been like that. You accept broken promises because of shared history. Over time, you may lower your standards, not because you want to, but because letting go feels harder than staying comfortable. And slowly, comfort replaces honesty. Trust based on values creates safety. You know where someone stands because their actions are predictable in the best way. They respond to challenges with integrity. They respect boundaries even when it's inconvenient. They celebrate your growth without resentment and tell you the truth without trying to control the outcome. This kind of trust doesn't depend on how long you've known someone, but on how they show up consistently. When trust is based only on history, it often becomes one-sided. You keep investing because of the past, while ignoring the present. You protect the relationship even when it costs you clarity or peace. This is how people stay loyal to connections that no longer honor who they are becoming. Loyalty to the past can quietly become betrayal of the future. Your future requires different standards than your past did. Growth changes you. What you once tolerated may no longer feel acceptable, and what once felt normal may now feel limiting. Some people are meant to walk with you for a season, not a lifetime. Their role was real and meaningful, but it doesn't automatically extend into the future you're creating. Choosing values over history is not an act of rejection. It's an act of alignment. It's recognizing that trust must be earned continuously, not inherited from the past. When you prioritize values, you create space for relationships that support who you are becoming, not just who you used to be. And that shift protects your future far more than clinging to familiarity ever could. A vision is fragile in its early stages, not because it lacks strength, but because it hasn't yet built armor. When an idea is new, it lives in a sensitive space between belief and doubt. This is why your vision needs protection, not public approval. The moment you expose it to too many opinions, you allow voices that haven't earned the right to shape it. Not everyone who listens is listening with understanding, and not everyone who responds is responding with wisdom. Oversharing often feels like progress. Talking about your plans can give a temporary sense of momentum, as if speaking them aloud moves you closer to achieving them. But words without action can become a substitute for action itself. You begin to feel accomplished simply by explaining your goals, and that false sense of completion can quietly reduce the urgency to actually do the work. The vision starts to live in conversation instead of in discipline. Public approval also comes with public influence. Every person you tell brings their own fears, limitations, and experiences into your idea. Some project their past failures onto your future. Others offer advice rooted in caution rather than possibility. Even well-meaning comments can introduce doubt, forcing you to defend or adjust a vision that was once clear in your mind. What started as excitement slowly turns into confusion. Negativity rarely arrives as open hostility. It shows up as realism. People warn you about risks, timing, and competition, often without understanding your commitment or capacity. These warnings may sound intelligent, but they chip away at your confidence. You start questioning whether your vision is practical instead of asking whether you're willing to grow into the person required to fulfill it. Oversharing also invites comparison. Once your plans are public, they become subject to timelines that aren't yours. People ask for updates, expect results, and measure your progress against others. This external pressure can push you to rush, pivot unnecessarily, or abandon the vision altogether just to escape judgment. What was meant to be a personal mission turns into a performance. Protection doesn't mean secrecy driven by fear. It means intentional silence. It means sharing your vision only with those who understand the weight of responsibility that comes with it. The right people don't just listen, they help you strengthen your resolve. They ask questions that sharpen your thinking, not ones that dilute your belief. Great visions grow best in quiet consistency. They need time to develop roots before being exposed to the elements. When you protect your vision, you give it space to mature without interference. You allow your actions to speak before your words do. And when the results finally appear, they won't need approval. They will stand on their own, undeniable and complete. Sometimes growth demands a level of separation that feels uncomfortable at first. Not because something is wrong, but because something important is being built. Walking alone is often misunderstood as failure or rejection, when in reality it can be a sign of transition. It's the space between who you were and who you are becoming. During this phase, familiar faces may fade, conversations may change, and the noise that once surrounded you begins to quiet down. Isolation is not loneliness when it is chosen with intention. Loneliness feels empty and draining, but preparation feels focused and purposeful. In isolation, you begin to hear your own thoughts more clearly. Without constant input from others, your priorities sharpen. You start recognizing which desires are truly yours and which ones were borrowed from expectations, comparisons, or pressure. This clarity is difficult to achieve in crowded spaces. Walking alone forces self-reliance. When there is no one to validate your choices or reassure you, you learn to trust your own judgment. You stop waiting for encouragement and start acting from conviction. This builds an internal strength that cannot be shaken by outside opinions. Confidence developed in isolation is deeper because it comes from proving things to yourself, not from being praised by others. Preparation often requires silence. Growth needs uninterrupted time to think, to fail privately, to refine ideas without distraction. In isolation, you can experiment without fear of judgment. You can move slowly, adjust quietly, and learn deeply. This is where discipline replaces motivation, and consistency becomes more important than recognition. Many people fear walking alone because it feels like being left behind, but often it means you are moving ahead into territory others are not ready to enter. When your goals change, your environment must change too. Some connections can't follow you into that next phase, not because of conflict, but because of misalignment. Letting go creates space for growth that cannot happen when you are constantly pulled back by familiarity. Isolation also reveals character. Without an audience, you discover who you are when no one is watching. You confront habits, fears, and excuses that were previously hidden by busyness or social noise. This self-awareness is uncomfortable, but it is necessary. You can't build a strong future without first understanding the foundation you're standing on. Preparation is rarely glamorous. It doesn't come with applause or recognition. It looks like quiet mornings, long nights, and steady effort with no immediate reward. But this season is temporary. The strength, clarity, and discipline built in isolation prepare you for the responsibility that comes with growth. Walking alone is not the destination. It's the training ground for what comes next. Here is a *** strong, emotionally grounded ending *** that fits the tone and message of the speech you've been building. And understand this clearly: walking alone is not a sign that you've lost people. It's a sign that you've outgrown certain versions of your life. The silence you feel right now is not empty. It's making room for clarity, for strength, for discipline, and for a future that demands more of you than comfort ever could. This season will not last forever. One day the path will widen and the right people will meet you there. People who don't slow your pace, question your vision, or drain your energy. Until then, keep moving. Keep building, keep choosing growth, even when it feels lonely, because the ones who are prepared to lead, to create, and to rise are always trained in moments when no one is watching. And if you must walk alone for a while, walk with purpose.